What would you do if a police officer started yelling at you in public for no reason at all? That's exactly what happened to one woman at the airport. But what no one expected was how she responded. Calmly, confidently, and with one move that left everyone in shock. Before we jump in, don't forget to subscribe to Moral Mirror, where we bring you real stories that reveal the truth, expose bias, and hold up a mirror to society. Let's get into it. It was a typical Monday morning at LAX, crowded, loud, and filled with the usual airport rush. Business travelers tugged their suitcases, parents guided sleepy kids, and the smell of overpriced coffee filled the air. Everything felt ordinary, just another day of people going places. But in the middle of all that noise and movement stood Danielle Taylor, a composed black woman dressed simply in a black coat, jeans, and sneakers. She wasn't making a scene. She wasn't doing anything out of the ordinary. In fact, she was just standing near a bench, checking her phone, waiting for the next set of instructions after clearing security. Danielle, a 34-year-old FBI agent, had just wrapped up a cybercrime conference in Los Angeles and was flying back home. She was traveling solo and preferred to blend in. No flashy luggage, no visible badge, nothing that screamed authority. Just a quiet presence, the kind of person you'd walk past without a second glance. But someone did notice her, and not in the way you'd hope. Enter Officer Mark Parker, an airport security guard in his mid-40s. He was making his rounds, scanning the crowds with a look that said he'd seen it all and judged most of it. As he passed by Danielle, he slowed down, gave her a once-over, and suddenly walked straight toward her. Without any greeting, warning, or even courtesy, he barked, "What are you doing here? This area isn't for passengers. You need to move." Now, Danielle looked up from her phone, surprised. "I'm just waiting. TSA told me I could wait here," she answered calmly. But Officer Parker didn't like that. Maybe it was her tone, confident but respectful. Maybe it was her standing still in a place he thought she didn't belong. Or maybe, as many in the crowd would later suspect, it was just her appearance that triggered his reaction. "Don't talk back," he snapped. "I said move. You people always think the rules don't apply." At that moment, the energy around them shifted. A few heads turned. A man sitting a few feet away looked up from his laptop. Another woman nearby pulled out her phone and started recording, just in case. Danielle didn't raise her voice. She didn't step back. She simply replied, "Sir, is there a reason you're speaking to me like this?" But Parker wasn't interested in reason. He leaned in slightly, voice louder now, tried to assert control. "You think you're special or something? Don't test me." Danielle didn't flinch. She'd seen worse. She'd handled high-stress interrogations and undercover operations. But this was different. This wasn't danger. This was disrespect, loud, public, and unnecessary. And as the tension built, she knew it was time to take control. Not with anger, not with power plays, but with something far more powerful, something he'd never see coming. Danielle stood tall, not physically towering over the officer, but her calm confidence filled the space around her. In contrast, Officer Parker's voice was growing louder, sharper, more aggressive, like he was trying to prove something not just to her, but to everyone watching. "I've had enough attitude today. I don't need it from you too. Don't make this harder than it has to be," he said, jabbing a finger toward her, as if she'd just committed a crime. Danielle glanced around. A few more people were watching now, some pretending to scroll through their phones while recording discreetly, others frozen in their tracks. A mother nearby held her child's hand a little tighter. A businessman raised an eyebrow. Something was clearly off, and people knew it. But Officer Parker didn't seem to notice or care. "This area is restricted. Either you move right now, or I'll have to escort you out myself," he barked. Danielle kept her voice measured. "With respect, I was instructed by TSA to wait here. You're escalating a situation that doesn't exist." Wrong move, in Parker's eyes. He took a step closer, puffing out his chest. "Look, you're not special. Just because you think you know how things work doesn't mean I won't have you detained. You people always think you're above the rules." There it was. Those two words, "you people," landed hard. Subtle to some, but sharp and stinging to anyone who's heard them used to belittle, to group, to target. Danielle's face didn't change, but inside, she felt that cold, familiar grip of racial profiling tightening around the moment. This wasn't about airport policy. It wasn't about restricted areas. It was about control, and Parker trying to assert his over someone he had instantly judged. People in the terminal could sense it, too. One man leaned over to his friend and whispered, "She didn't even do anything." Another woman, now openly recording, said to no one in particular, "This is harassment." Still, Danielle didn't move. She didn't shout. She didn't back down. She simply asked, "Sir, are you absolutely sure you want to do this?" Her tone wasn't sarcastic. It wasn't threatening. It was calm, steady, but full of weight. A warning wrapped in composure. Parker blinked, confused for a second, as if he didn't understand what she meant. Then he scoffed. "What, are you going to call a manager? Go ahead. Let's see who listens." And in that instant, Danielle knew the moment had arrived. The point where silence would no longer serve her, where continuing to let him unravel himself was no longer enough. She took one last breath, scanned the growing crowd, and reached slowly into her coat pocket. It was time, not for yelling, not for confrontation, but for truth. The kind that doesn't need to be loud, because once it's revealed, everything else falls quiet. Danielle didn't flinch. She didn't make a sudden move. She reached into her coat pocket slowly and deliberately, maintaining eye contact with Officer Parker. Every step she took was precise, controlled, confident. She trained for moments like this, except this wasn't supposed to be one of them. As her fingers wrapped around the familiar leather holder, the crowd seemed to lean in without even realizing it. The quiet tension had grown thick, like everyone was waiting to see what she'd do next. She pulled out the small black case, flipped it open, and calmly held it in front of Officer Parker's face. There it was, the gold badge, the official photo ID, Federal Bureau of Investigation. The moment it appeared, Parker's entire demeanor changed. His voice, just seconds earlier loud and aggressive, suddenly shrank to almost a whisper. "You're with the FBI?" he stuttered, eyes scanning the badge like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Danielle gave a small nod. No smile, no gloating, just truth. "Special Agent Danielle Taylor, Cybercrime Division. Would you like me to call my supervisor?" Silence. For a split second, it was like time froze. The same people who had been watching nervously a few moments ago now stood in stunned silence. A woman nearby gasped. A man audibly whispered, "Oh, damn." Officer Parker took a step back. His arms dropped to his sides. The color seemed to drain from his face. You could see the thoughts rushing through his head, the realization, the embarrassment, the fear of consequences. He opened his mouth as if to say something, but nothing came out. There was nothing to say. He had assumed. He had judged. And now, he stood exposed in front of dozens of strangers and at least 3 phones filming the entire encounter. Danielle, still calm, slowly closed her badge and returned it to her pocket. "I believe we're done here," she said softly. No anger, no revenge, just professional dismissal. Parker mumbled something under his breath. An apology, maybe, or an excuse, but Danielle had already turned away. Not to walk out, but to remain exactly where she was standing before the confrontation even began. Because the truth was, she didn't need to move. She never had. The crowd began murmuring again, this time louder. Someone clapped softly in the back. A woman nodded at Danielle in quiet approval. Phones were lowered now, but people wouldn't forget what they saw. The man who had just minutes earlier barked orders and delivered threats now faded into the background. Danielle, on the other hand, had revealed more than just a badge. She had shown what quiet strength looks like, what true authority feels like, and what happens when dignity is met with disrespect and dignity wins. But this moment wasn't just about Danielle. It was about something bigger. The phone's recording would carry this far beyond the airport walls. And what the world would see wasn't just a viral moment. It was a mirror. Within hours of the confrontation, the video began making waves online. It had all the ingredients of a viral moment. Clear injustice, a powerful twist, and a calm but commanding response that left viewers stunned. A passenger's 48-second clip titled, "Airport Cop Yells at Black Woman. Then She Pulls Out an FBI Badge," was posted to TikTok and Twitter. In less than 2 hours, it hit over 2 million views, with thousands of comments pouring in by the minute. The hashtags #FBI, #racial profiling, and #respect-her-badge were trending by that afternoon. People couldn't stop talking about the moment. The way she just calmly hit him with the badge. Iconic. He thought she was nobody. Turns out, she was the FBI. Imagine if she didn't have that badge. This happens every day to women of color. She handled that with more grace than most could. Major news outlets like CNN, MSNBC, and even TMZ picked up the story by the evening. Clips were replayed on television, and commentators were quick to point out the uncomfortable truth. Danielle was only shown basic respect after revealing she was an FBI agent. One retired police chief tweeted, "This isn't about one bad officer. It's about how easily we assume, how quickly we judge, and how rarely we pause to ask questions before shouting commands." The public outcry grew louder. People wanted accountability, not just apologies. The airport authority released a short statement. "We are aware of the incident involving a security officer and a federal agent. We take all reports of misconduct seriously and have opened an internal review." But that wasn't enough. Internet sleuths quickly identified Officer Mark Parker. His previous history began surfacing. Nothing officially confirmed, but whispers of prior complaints and aggressive conduct circulated fast. Meanwhile, Danielle Taylor remained mostly silent. She didn't post online. She didn't give interviews. According to one unnamed source within the FBI, she had submitted an internal report and had requested that the Bureau not escalate the matter publicly. She wanted accountability, not fame. But the silence only made her more respected. Journalists began calling her the quiet storm. Online forums debated how differently the situation could have ended if Danielle hadn't had that badge. How many people don't get to pull out proof of who they are? One post read, "She had to be FBI just to be treated with basic decency." Let that sink in. Civil rights groups, including the ACLU, used the moment to highlight deeper systemic issues. They issued statements backing Danielle and called for more training around racial bias and de-escalation. But beyond the media frenzy and internet reactions, the most powerful change was happening in people's minds. The crowd that witnessed the event that day didn't just see a woman flash a badge. They saw how dignity can disarm power, and how deeply unfair it is that someone needs a badge to demand what should be a given: respect. As the viral buzz started to fade and the headlines moved on to the next big thing, this story left behind something much deeper, a moment of truth that stuck with millions. Danielle Taylor didn't shout. She didn't argue. She didn't fight to be heard. She simply stood her ground and showed who she was. That single moment, where she calmly revealed her FBI badge, was more than a twist in a viral video. It was a mirror that made us all ask the hard question. Why does someone need a badge to be treated with basic respect? Her calm strength, her controlled presence, it forced everyone watching to stop, think, and reflect. And that's what makes this moment bigger than the people involved. It became a symbol, a lesson. And here's the part that hits hardest. If Danielle didn't have that badge, would the outcome have been the same? We all know the answer. And that's the problem. It's moments like these that remind us why stories matter, why they need to be told, not just for clicks or views, but to help us grow, see clearer, and treat people better. At Moral Mirror, we believe in sharing those stories, not because they're trending, but because they're true. Every line in this story was written with care, by real people who believe storytelling still matters. We take our time. We pay attention to the emotion, the details, the impact, and we create with purpose. So if you believe that real stories still deserve real voices, then we invite you to support what we do. Backend Index Pointing writes, subscribe to Moral Mirror, where every video is made with honesty, intention, and a voice that comes from the heart, not a machine. Because in a world full of noise, it's the human stories that stay with us. Real power doesn't come from flashing a badge. Real power comes from how you carry yourself. even when no one expects you to have any. Thanks for watching. Stay thoughtful, stay kind, and don't forget to subscribe to Moral Mirror, where every reflection tells a deeper story.